Analysis of a backflip on a trampoline by Paige Forbes
and Durchslag.
In our overview, we chose to analyze a backflip because it is a popular trick that people do in many of the sports that we participate in. We wanted to analyze the exact movements that these individuals are doing and how we can help prevent injury. Throughout this presentation, we will be specifically analyzing the forces, both external and internal, the angles, joints, flexion, movements that are eccentric, concentric, and isometric movements, momentum, and the importance of stability and balance during the 4 phases of a backflip.
The four phases during a backflip include preparation, loading, execution, and landing. Eccentric, concentric, and isometric are the 3 movements that we will be discussing throughout this presentation as well. Some quick definitions for you are: eccentric. Muscle actions occur when muscles lengthen under tension. This is coming down from a jump in the example of doing a backflip. Concentric. Muscle actions occur when muscles shorten. In the example of doing a backflip, this is when the individual jumps up. Isometric. This is when joint angle and muscle length do not change during contraction. These are static positions rather than being dynamic through a range of motion. For example, this is when the individual is static in the execution phase.
For phase 1 in the backflip, preparation, or known as the jump. Here, the body is held in a closed, packed position. The hips and knees are together and fully extended. The arms are straight and extended forwards. He starts out jumping to help get momentum and engages several movements such as hip extension, eccentric movement, knee extension, eccentric, ankle plantar flexion, eccentric, shoulder abduction, and flexion. There are also a few muscle groups that he engages, which are his quadriceps, hamstrings, gastrocnemius, and core.
In phase 2, we have the loading. He squats slightly and the shoulders extend as the arms come downwards and back for the windup. Here we have hip flexion, which is eccentrically done by the hamstrings and glutes, serratus, tensor fasciae latae, iliopsoas, rectus femoris, and pectineus. We also have knee flexion, which is also eccentrically done by the serratus, popliteus, semimembranosus. We have ankle dorsiflexion, which is eccentric. His toes are isometrically stable, and there's shoulder extension using the teres major, pectoralis major, pectoralis deltoid, latissimus dorsi. Here in the images, you can see his shoulders are extended back at 185 degrees. His knees are bent at 120 degrees. And as he brings his arms forward to begin the momentum backwards, he brings his arms at 86 degrees. In the third phase of a backflip, we have the execution, or known as the rotation and extension. In this phase, he swings and extends his arms up and over his head as he jumps off. He pushes up with his legs using his hips, knees, and ankles to perform a maximum vertical jump. In the next slide, we will take a look at the specific angles that this individual had in his arms and legs in order to perform this phase properly.
Phase 3, angles and velocity during extension. For flexion at the shoulder, he uses anterior deltoid and pectoralis major upper. For upper rotation of the scapula, he uses his serratus anterior and lower trapezius. In extension at the knee joint, he engages his vastus lateralis, vastus intermedius, and vastus medialis. In flexion at the hip joint, he uses his sartorius, tensor fasciae latae, iliopsoas, rectus femoris, and pectineus. For ankle plantar flexion is used in isometric movement along with toe flexion, also isometric movement. Here we see when he begins rotating back, he reaches a velocity of 0.44 meters per second and reaches his maximum velocity at 1.02 meters per second as he is fully extended. Increasing his velocity allows him to fully complete the rotation.
In the fourth and final phase of doing a backflip, we have the landing phase. Here, he pulls the knees towards the center of the body to initiate rotating, bringing the knees to the chest at maximal height of the jump, while rotating, leaving the head in neutral position until the full rotation is almost completed. When the rotation is almost completed, the neck is extended so that he can see the landing. Here, he uses his abdominals, which he uses to contract to pull the legs and pelvis over the top. You have hip flexion, which is concentric, using the sartorius, tensor fasciae latae, iliopsoas, rectus femoris, and pectineus. You have knee flexion, which is concentric, using the sartorius, popliteus, semimembranosus. You have ankle plantar flexion, which is isometric. You have toe flexion, which is concentric, and abduction at the shoulder joint, using the teres major, pectoralis major, upper and lower, latissimus dorsi, and you also have using ligaments in the knees, which are used as shock absorbers. During the landing phase, he begins to open up while looking at his landing. Keeps his back at almost 180 degrees, and his knees are slightly bent. In the images here, you can see he's at 176 and 183 when he's almost fully extended, while his knees are at 130 degrees. Having a proper stance while landing is crucial in this phase of the backflip. Landing properly not only allows you to land the backflip, but landing properly can help prevent injury to the back and the knees. During this presentation, we mentioned the muscles that were used during each phase. While doing a backflip, just about every muscle is engaged in the human body. This includes the neck, shoulders, arms, torso, legs, and core. In order for these muscles to function properly, the human body must also rely on the joints, which are in the intervertebral, shoulder girdle, elbow, hip, knee, and ankles. When all joints and muscles work together properly, an individual is able to fully complete a proper backflip without sustaining injury. We're then able to analyze the internal forces as well as external forces. The internal forces are the most important because these are the forces that are generated by the individual who's completing the backflip. While completing a backflip, the individual has to be aware of his or her balance and stability in order to properly land the flip and avoid any consequences. In one of our research articles, the author talks about how an athlete is able to manipulate balance and stability while also using gravity and torque, which are external forces. He also mentions how our brain is able to send signals that allow specific muscles to fire, which then leads us to maintain the orientation we desire. There are 6 types of synovial joints in the human body: ball and socket, hinge, plantar, pivot, gliding, and saddle. When doing a backflip, the most commonly used joints are the hinge, which are in the elbow and knees, and the ball and socket, which are in the shoulders.
While backflips may seem fun and easy to do, they require a lot of practice and proper technique. The individual in this video has had a few years of experience doing backflips with proper technique. There are always possibilities for injuries. This includes Ankle sprains and rolls. These are the most common due to too much pressure being exerted, which can then lead to a strain. Knee sprains. These are typically done to knee ligament or tendon injury, result in ACL. Lumbar region of spinae, a condition known as spondylolisthesis, which is a defect in vertebrae like a crack on both sides of bony ring of the spinal column. When that happens, the bone is weakened and cannot maintain its proper position. The defective vertebrae can slip forward relative to the vertebra below it and cause this condition. When vertebra slides forward, it can squeeze or pinch the nerve and lead to low back pain. Injury to head and neck can be sprain, or if fallen on, it folds and can then break the neck. Backflips are used in a variety of sports. Within my research, I found it fascinating to see how much variety there is with backflips being performed. Within all the sports, which are gymnastics, skiing and snowboarding, figure skating, diving, and wakeboarding, each were all in different scenarios which required similar movements of motion but different ways of approaching it and how they land. For example, there was a cheerleader who broke the record for completing the most backflips. She illustrated how much momentum and acceleration she must have contained in order to sustain such consistent backflips at once. Where in snowboarding, a backflip is executed by maintaining a flat balance admitted to zero or little speed checks, by tucking the body in to increase the speed of rotation and opening up will slow it down. Where in figure skating, skater Zuria Bonley performed the first stunt, which is pronounced illegal till this day. She threw a one-bladed backflip while figure skating, which sustained the same dynamics up flipping. However, she didn't tuck her body. It was fully extended and so poised, but did use her arms in a way which her elbows were flexed. In the flip, she also uses her trunk and gluteus maximus to keep her up in the air. Where in gymnastics, they perform the backflip using proper form and techniques. These athletes in gymnastics typically do these types of tricks in various ways, such as on balance beams, in routines, trampolines, as well as bars. Overall, a backflip can be performed throughout a wide variety of sports, and we can determine that a lot of the motion that occurs is similar.
Stretching, proper warm-up, resistance training, use of a spotter, core training are all crucial for injury prevention. Core strength, equipment, flexibility, mimicking the flip, and repetition are all important for performance improvement. Looking at equipment for not only injury prevention, but performance improvement as well, we found in one of our research articles they conducted a study on the research of injury associated with a failed backflip, performed on a rebound surface such as a trampoline or tumbling trampoline. It is important not only to properly prepare yourself, but be aware of your equipment. This can include the rebound device you are using, or as simple as the clothing that you are wearing.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed a lot and learned from our presentation.
Bye!